This week on Off the Bench podcast, we have Molly Thompson-Smith. Molly is a Team GB climber. She's made it into the Paris Olympic team, and I'm just so excited we've got her on. I really wanted to cover a sport at the Olympics that people might not know that much about, that's still fairly new to the Games, and Molly just gave an incredible overview of the sport as a whole. She also spoke so well about her own story, about the injuries she's overcoming the disappointment of missing out on the Tokyo Games as well, and also just what it's like for her to be a woman of color in a mostly white male space, and how she's kind of overcome challenges through that, and all the change she wants to see in her sport too. So I really loved speaking to her. I hope you really enjoy this episode too. So welcome to Off the Bench, Molly. So incredible to have you here chatting to you, and so exciting to be chatting to you about a week or so after you qualified for the Olympics. So massive congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a week today since I got my ticket, and yeah, it still doesn't feel real, really. It's just been such a dream of mine ever since I was a little girl, and such a long process and journey to get here. So yeah, still a little bit overwhelmed. I'm not sure how long it'll take for it to all sink in, really.
I bet. I mean, can you talk about the qualification, the kind of how you qualify? Because it's pretty high pressure, isn't it? It's in competition. And I think you qualified at your last opportunity to qualify. Am I right in saying?
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a long qualification process for Paris. It started properly, I guess, at the the beginning of 2023. The first kind of opportunity to actually get a ticket was at World Champs last summer, but to qualify for this qualifying series that I just competed in, you had to compete in all of the World Cups across the lead and boulder discipline last season. So it's kind of been like a 12-month plus experience, really drawn out. And yeah, there's only a month until the Games pretty much. So it's, been a really long, slow process, and now it's all go, go, go.
I mean, that's mad it's a lot of pressure, and for such a long period of time. I know athletes are used to that kind of pressure, but for you, especially because this is the first Olympics you qualified for. I know you tried for Tokyo too. How do you kind of keep that in your mind, like keep focus in your mind when you've got kind of experience doing this where it hasn't gone the way you wanted it to?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot from Tokyo, and as hard as it was to not qualify there, I'm almost glad I didn't, because it made this process, I was way more motivated for this Paris qualification journey. And I could take all of the lessons from not qualifying in Tokyo, but also that little fire in my belly from seeing everyone become Olympians and seeing everyone compete in Tokyo on the biggest stage. It was like, right, for the next one, I definitely want to be there. And yeah, it was, without a pandemic and all the other things that made Tokyo quite crazy, it was a much better run up into this one, but it was still, basically life felt like it was on pause for the last 16 to 18 months, just trying to qualify for the Olympics and dedicating absolutely everything to it, because that was the only way, really.
I want to kind of go back to the beginning, I guess, for you, and to talk about how you first got into climbing. I think to do that, some of our listeners might not actually know how climbing features in the Olympics. They might have missed it last time, or they might not know how it works. And like you said, I think we were chatting before how the format's changed as well. So I wonder if you can just give kind of an introduction to climbing to someone who might not know a lot about the sport.
Yeah, for sure. So climbing, like we just said, is different, will be different in this Olympic Games in Paris compared to how you might have seen it in Tokyo. And that's because we've got an extra medal this time, which is amazing. All of the athletes competing are generally specialists in one of three disciplines, but for Tokyo, athletes had to compete in all three disciplines. And for Paris, we've now kind of split it a little bit. So we've got speed climbing on its own, which is the race, probably the thing that most people were excited about from Tokyo. It's a 15-meter wall. It's the same every single time, and people basically run up a vertical wall, and it's incredibly impressive. So we have that for one discipline, and then on the other side of things we have boulder and lead together, and these are two very different disciplines, but definitely more compatible together than they are with speed. So for bouldering, you've got 4 or 5 boulders, and these are kind of short climbs above a mat for safety, and there's no ropes involved. And nowadays they're quite similar to parkour. They're quite dynamic. They test lots of different skills that you need to be a good climber. So strength, flexibility, technicality, dynamicism, parkour skills. And then you've also got lead, which is the longer one that has a rope, and is more of the endurance event. So in Paris, we'll see all 3 disciplines, but not all athletes will do all 3. No one will do all 3. You'll have the speed climbers doing speed, and then the rest of the athletes will do boulder and lead. And you have to compete in both disciplines across 2 days to qualify for the finals.
Yeah, and you'll be competing in boulder and lead, I'm right in thinking.
Yes, that's what I'll be doing.
Yeah, so tell me how you first got into the sport, because it's something that a lot of people might have tried as kind of a kid, but maybe never pursued. And for you, I think that's how it went. You kind of tried it at a birthday party. Was it your own birthday party?
Yeah, it was my birthday party. Yeah, I grew up in a very sporty household in London, and my brother and I were able to try all sorts of urban sports, I guess. I think I even had a handball birthday party at some point. It was just, if it was involving activity and exercise, then my brother and I were in for it, and my parents were super supportive. So when I was about 7, I tried climbing for the first time at my birthday party and was just instantly in love with the sport and hooked and begged to go back. And I think it took a little while for me to be accepted into the local club, but then, I've not stopped climbing since, and I can't remember a time before climbing, and I can't imagine my life without climbing. But yeah, like you said, I think a lot of adults maybe tried it as a kid and never really went back to it. But thanks to the Olympics, there's so many more climbing walls across the UK, especially in London, and I think it's becoming quite a popular and trendy sport.
Definitely. I think there has been a real surge in recent years. But I wonder, because when you were getting into it, when you fell in love with it, it wasn't an Olympic sport. That wasn't something you could aspire to as a kid. Did anyone kind of, I wonder what the attitude was around that. Did people kind of say, I don't know, like, is it, you were obviously really sporty. Were they kind of like, why don't you do a sport that you can actually kind of compete in a different way? I know you can compete in climbing, but people maybe didn't really see that even.
Oh, for sure. It took basically until climbing was an Olympic sport for, the fact that I was a professional climber to be taken as a kind of serious job. Whenever people would ask me what I did and I say I was an athlete, and they go, "Oh, what sport?" and I'd say climbing, and they go, "What? Like climbing? You mean climbing trees? Like that's not a real sport, basically." And so it took a really long time for climbing to kind of receive the credibility and respect that I think it deserves as a sport, because it's incredibly athletic, and we have to train just as hard as any other, I guess, mainstream sport athlete. So yeah, it took a really long time for it to feel like a validated sport. But as a kid, I guess I was just having fun and wasn't really thinking about a career in it, although I've always been a massive Olympics fan, and I remember being a young girl watching the Olympics on TV with my parents and just being so inspired and in such awe of all of the Team GB athletes in particular, and thinking one day I want to be there. I don't know what sport yet, I don't know how, but one day, like, that's where I want to be, on the TV with my parents screaming at it.
That is so lovely. I love that it all kind of worked out and that your sport has been embraced and it is in the Olympics now. And like you say, there's so much athleticism involved in climbing. I mean, anyone who would have watched it at the Olympics or otherwise, or has tried it, will know that there's so much strength involved, there's so much technique involved. What do you think, for you, when you kind of introduce people to climbing? You gave a great introduction just now, just now earlier in our call, but I wonder what do you think is the best thing about the sport? What makes it so special to you?
I think it's really hard to choose one reason why climbing's the best. And of course, I'm super biased as a climber, but when I introduce climbing to new people, I'm saying things and I realize that there's so much about climbing that's super unique, or so different to any other sports. The fact that when I go and compete, I've never climbed the climbs or problems before, and I'll never climb them again. It's a different challenge every single time. The fact that it's so mentally challenging as well as physical, like, of course, all athletes are under a lot of mental pressure, and psychology is a huge part of sport, but there's so many different ways in which psychology and mindset can influence climbing. Like sometimes the best climber in the world won't win a World Cup or World Championships because they just can't see the solution to the problem. And so I think there's so many different unique challenges within climbing that makes it more than just a sport, and more than just like a physical exercise. And I think that's really interesting because you can take whatever you want from climbing, whether it's, you want to go climbing for a social and drink tea sit on the mats and watch your friends and support other people, or whether you want to go for an intense workout and try really hard and feel absolutely exhausted by the end of it, or whether you want to go and basically do a puzzle, a physical puzzle. You can just decide and choose and take whatever you want from climbing, and it can be that thing that you need at that time.
Yeah, and speaking of introducing people to climbing, you actually introduced climbing to me. I interviewed you a few years ago, I think it was 2018, and that was the first I tried climbing with you, which was like so much fun, such an experience. I remember being so nervous, and you were incredibly patient with me. And yeah, and in the end, now in the last couple of years, I've actually got into climbing recreationally myself and can totally see where you're coming from, not from maybe the competitive side, but in terms of the problem solving and also the supportive atmosphere that you get at climbing centers, I think, where people are always trying to help you kind of work out a route or just kind of cheering you on. It's such a lovely environment, like sporting environment, and quite different to any other that I've ever been in, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I love how collaborative climbing can be. Like, I guess if you take it quite literally for sport or lead climbing, you need someone else to belay you and keep you safe. So there's trust and collaboration and partnership involved in that. But also, like you said, I don't know any other sports where people just start cheering or supporting other people, like just in the climbing wall. It's great the amount of, support you can feel from just complete strangers who are also trying the same thing as you. And yeah, I really like that social aspect of climbing. And then on the competition side of things as well, I'm not sure if there are many other sports where you work with your competitors to kind of do the best that you can. So when climbers go out and have a look at their routes or boulders before they actually have their time to climb on it, because there's an observation period, people are always asking each other what they think the method is, and going through the routes together. And it looks very strange on camera. It looks like everyone's doing kind of a dance in the air, mimicking, I guess, the sequence and movement that they think they'll have to climb on the wall. But yeah, I think that's just kind of sums up what climbing's like in terms of how collaborative and social and friendly a sport it is, despite the fact that we're all competing against each other.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, you're totally right. It does look like a bit like a dance when people are kind of trying to work it out. I'm still very much a beginner, by the way, so I'm still working it out. But it's cool that also, just on the point of recreational climbing, that you can be in a room with some incredible climbers as well as people who are complete beginners, because there's different routes on the same wall, and it's very kind of inclusive in that way, which I think is super cool and really refreshing. I love that side to it too.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's another thing I love about climbing as well, is that at the moment climbing's still quite small, and so you can climb with some of the best climbers in the world just in a commercial gym. But regardless of that, I think it's amazing that you can go climbing, and the group can be of such varying levels in terms of their ability, but you can all still climb together, because there's so many different boulder problems at different intensities and levels, and you can support people on their projects whilst you try your own. And yeah, that's great. I think that's a really nice environment to have in the climbing wall.
Yeah, and on the point, I mean, we've been talking about problem solving, but on the point of the physical side of it, a lot of people might look at climbing and be like, oh my God, they've got to overcome fear to do it as well. I guess for you, you've been climbing since you were 7. You probably don't even have that fear anymore, but you have had really serious injuries. I mean, when we first spoke in 2018, you had just kind of recovered from a very serious finger injury. I think you described it as a Frankenstein finger because you had kind of this really big scar across it. But it was really insane, like how you'd kind of ripped the pulleys across your finger. It shows kind of how much strength is needed, even in the smallest kind of muscles in your hands, to compete in this sport. Can you talk a bit about how how you've overcome maybe those fears and also how injury has impacted your career too, because I know you've had a couple of serious ones.
Yeah, definitely. I had that triple pulley rupture back in 2017, and yeah, as a climber, you don't want to do any damage to your hands. So that was, I did think that that might be the end of my climbing competitive career, I guess, at that point. Um, but I also had a double fracture and dislocation of my ankle about 18 months ago. And that also came at a pretty terrible time. It was just before, well, it was the day before I left for my last World Cup of the season. Um, Typical. And then it was also, I guess, a few months before the start of the most important season of my life, I guess, which was the Olympic qualification season. And I remember lying there on the floor. I was climbing outside and I took a bad fall. And I remember lying there thinking, that's it, it's all over again. Like I've missed out on another Olympics. And I'm not old, but, you know, having to wait another 4 years, it would mean I'd be 30 almost, or 30, yeah. And just feeling like the chances for actually making that dream a reality were just slipping through my fingers. And so, yeah, I've had those two major injuries, and as awful as they were, I still wouldn't change anything. I'm a big believer in seeing the positives to injuries like that. It proved to me how resilient I am, that, you know, it's not over until it's over, and I absolutely love a comeback. So it gave me the motivation I needed to come back better and stronger. And I actually ended up having one of the best seasons of my career, making finals at World Championships, and I think having another top 5 position in a World Cup. So yeah, it just reminded me of how important climbing was in my life. But also I think it gave me some new goals, which when you've been working towards the same things for a decade, dreaming about the same dreams and having the same goals, like I think it would be unreasonable to expect people to be endlessly motivated to just continue pursuing that and not have any doubts or not get tired. So having these injuries kind of put a pause on those dreams and goals, but allowed me to create new, smaller goals that meant that I was actually progressing and achieving and being proud of myself, rather than kind of banging my head against a wall that was the same for my whole kind of competitive career. And so, you know, my perspective changed on everything. And after my ankle break, I wasn't even thinking about climbing really. I just wanted to be able to walk or do things for myself, be independent again. And so I remember, like, when I made my first cup of tea and carried it from the kettle to the sofa, that was one of the best moments of that year. And it was just so nice to be excited about progress and proud of myself and kind of see a light at the end of a different tunnel. And then, yeah, I think that kind of process of rehabbing that broken ankle and coming back was one of my most enjoyable and challenging, but mainly enjoyable experiences of the last few years, as it really proved to me how tough I was, and how if I want something and I give it everything and I surround myself by people who love and care for me, that, you know, anything's possible, and it doesn't have to be over.
I mean, that is such an incredible kind of perspective to take on an injury, like you say, which could have been the end of kind of your Olympic dream. I love the image of you kind of going and carrying a cup of tea back to the sofa and it being like, oh my God, wow, that's a huge achievement, especially considering the incredible kind of physical, like you're an athlete that does incredible things with your body, and to just be walking over to get a cup of tea is, it's a really cool image to think of, and how your goal setting had to change. And yeah, like you say, you've been going through 2 Olympic cycles to try and reach that same goal, with so many kind of different challenges that have come up along the way. What do you feel like you learnt the most about yourself during that time?
I think one of the things I struggled with during these Olympic cycles was feeling, obviously I wanted to do this for myself, but feeling like I owed it to other people, to all of the people who'd invested in me, whether it was financially or emotionally or with their support and belief. And I felt like I wanted to do it for so many other people. And I think failing and then actually managing it or going through the second process taught me that you've got to do it for yourself, and you've got to believe in yourself. And you know, people people are invested because they choose to be invested. It's not on you if they've chosen to invest in your hopes or dreams or goals, and you can't let that be a distractor, or be something that puts too much pressure on you. And so I learned that I'm internally motivated enough to achieve my goals and dreams, and it's nice to have people invested in you, but I didn't need that to make it happen. And yeah, I guess I made them proud as kind of a secondary thing to working really hard and making it happen for myself.
Love that. You kind of had to reframe it all and see it as see it as your own goal again, I guess, which
Yeah,
can be lost,
yeah,
I guess, in the
exactly.
years that you're reaching for it.
Yeah, and it kind of changes, it morphs it into something else, I think. And rather than it being an incredible opportunity, or kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, because how many people get to try and even qualify for an Olympics? It's not that many people in the grand scheme of things. And rather than that being, yeah, exciting and all that, it would become full of pressure and
Mm.
something I almost didn't even want to think about, or I couldn't talk about, because it meant too much, and it was restricting me and holding me back. And so, once I realized that I just needed to do it for myself, and believe in myself, it kind of liberated me, and I was able to actually try and, or like actually start to see my potential and strive for that.
Hmm. And I wonder, in the way that your training works, do you work with a specific coach all the time? Is that how it goes for you? And I wonder how much kind of support you felt you had in terms of not just from a coaching perspective, but from a physical perspective and a mental perspective to kind of get back on that wall and um and kind of trust in your body, because like you say, you got the injury literally from falling off the wall, and that can leave scars, I guess, for some people.
Yeah, it took a long time after breaking my ankle to feel like myself on the wall again. I remember actually, even by the time I did my first World Cup back, which I think was like less than, or maybe just about half a year after breaking my ankle, I was terrified. Like the last session I had, it was in America, and the last session I had before the actual event, I was with my partner, and my coach was at home, but I remember calling her just in tears because I couldn't fall off. I was way too scared of landing on the mats, and I was like, I don't think I can do this competition. Like, I think I have to pull out. And she was great. She was like, you just have to listen to yourself, and if it's too much, it's too much. Like, we'll reassess and adapt and change. But you know, I believe that you can do this. And I did end up going out and competing, and I had a great competition, but it wasn't easy to get over, like you said, the scars that injury had left. And that was something I battled with continuously until even today. Like, there are still some moves in bouldering that really scare me. If I have to land on my ankle or stand on something and there's a risk of slipping, or there are still so many things that make me nervous. But yeah, having my partner, my coach behind me, just telling me that they believe in me, but also reminding me that if it's too far, it's too far, and it has to come from me, has been so helpful. And now when I do these things, it's just, yeah, testament to all the hard work that I've put in, and also my mental resilience from coming back from these injuries, and my belief in myself is just growing day by day, which is a beautiful experience, really.
100%. I mean, as a recreational climber, but a boulderer, like I know it can be quite humbling, that wall. Like it can make you see your limitations in a way, and to like fight past that is scary. And I can imagine even scarier when you're doing the kind of routes that you're doing. So yeah, to do that, even though you've had kind of such serious injuries, is kind of a test, and so recently as well, is a testament to how far you wanted to push yourself to get to Paris. So very cool to hear you kind of talk through that, because it's hard. Most athletes go through difficult injuries, and that fear is hard to kind of get past.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there's kind of this idea that athletes don't, or like you just come back from an injury and like once you're back on the at the competition or on the start line you're fine, but it's a lot more complex than that. And I'm sure that most athletes carry on like doubt and fear from their previous injuries, like beyond what people can see or expect as well. So yeah, I think it's, as an athlete, for me, like when I see other athletes come back from injuries and they achieve and they're successful, I think it's even more impressive. And I'm always, yeah, super psyched for them, because I know that it's not just all the physical work that they've put in that's got them there, but there's a whole lot of mental strength that's got them to that point, but that they're probably still, you know, battling with some doubts and some fear as well. So whatever they've achieved is even more impressive.
And just on a last point on the injuries, being off the wall is something that I know you've kind of struggled with in the past. I think I remember us chatting the first time that I interviewed you. You spoke about how you'd gone traveling as you were kind of a teenager finishing school, going traveling, and you came back early because you were like, I really miss climbing. I realized how much I wanted to do it. I wonder, yeah, how do you kind of cope with the experience of not being able to climb? Obviously, with a broken ankle, when you had your finger injury. I know that actually with your finger injury, you came back was it a couple of weeks later, and you're just climbing with one hand, which I thought was just absolutely amazing. So yeah, tell me about what that part of the kind of recovery process is like for you.
Yeah, like I said, I've not stopped climbing really since I started at like 7 or 8. So it's been almost 20 years of doing this thing, and it's more than a job, of course. It's a passion, and I think climbing's a great sport because you can have kind of the competitive job side of things, but also I love climbing outside, being in nature, just going and messing about with my friends. So it's got that, you know, recreational just hobby kind of side to it as well. So when you get injured as an athlete in a sport like climbing, you lose all of the bits that kind of help you manage your mental health as well. So yeah, being on the wall with my friends and being outside. So having injuries and not being able to actually climb that's probably one of the worst bits of it, just not being able to go and relieve all that stress. So yeah, that was really tough. But I think one of the pros of being an athlete in this situation is I'm very good at sticking to a plan. If it's in my Google Sheets, it's law basically. And so I could see the bigger picture, and I'm very good at trusting in the process. And so knowing that, yeah, it sucked to not be able to get back on the wall, but it's just a temporary bit of time, and they're trying to do as much of the other bits to get back as quick as possible. So I was in the gym every day, just like relentlessly doing leg press and yeah, split squats and everything I needed to do. And I think, yeah, just channeling all my energy and focus into what I could do rather than what I couldn't do, and trying to achieve those smaller goals, like being able to do things for myself or get the train to physio by myself. Doing things like that kind of at least distracted me from all I was missing out on the wall.
Yeah, for sure. And just moving on from kind of injuries, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the sport as a whole. It's traditionally a male white sport, and I wonder how you felt going into it. Maybe more when you went into it in a kind of competitive way, how you felt kind of you fit into that space. Did you ever feel like you were, or have you ever continued to feel like maybe you didn't fit in there, or there wasn't a space for you because maybe you didn't see other people who looked like you?
For sure. And I mean, I always felt different, even as a kid. I remember going climbing with the club and struggling to get a helmet on my head because my hair wasn't I couldn't just take it down like the other girls with long straight hair, and the instructor kind of trying to jam it on my head and stuff all of my curls and frizzy curls into the sides of this helmet. And so from day one, basically, I felt different. But as a kid, I think you see those a bit less maybe. And I was having so much fun that I just wanted to go climbing. And I'm so grateful that my parents like supported me through continuing being able to climb. And I loved it so much and had such a good time that being different was kind of almost hidden by how much I loved the sport. But definitely as I started moving on to the competitive scene, I felt even more different. I had people touch my hair, make comments, just reinforce the fact that I wasn't like anyone or everyone else, and I was the only kid of colour on the circuit, and it was noticeable no matter how much I loved the sport at that point and how much I tried. And it's something that has been like a theme throughout my entire climbing life. Like, the climbing community is a lot better. We're making progress in inclusion and diversity, but I still walk into a climbing wall and I pretty much never see anyone who looks like me, or it's one or two people. And when I do see these people, I notice them. And to me, that means there's still a massive problem. And I think that realizing that my difference was a power and something not to be ashamed of at some point, I think it was like towards the end of my teens, early 20s, that's been like a massive defining moment in my career and in my relationship with climbing, I guess, and now has become one of the things I'm most passionate about, in my career inside, well, to do with performance, but also outside of performance as well.
Yeah, I mean, experiencing like kind of those microaggressions in your safe space and in the sport that you love so much, it must be frustrating. I can't imagine the feelings that go through your mind. Do you feel like you said you feel like climbing is changing in a way, and it's strange because I think climbing centers can feel like such an inclusive place because there's people of all kind of abilities but at the same time you've still got this kind of elephant in the room, I guess, that almost everyone there is white. So I wonder, how do you feel like the sport is looking to change, and what changes have you seen kind of happen since you've been part of it?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly. And now it's really cool to see more community groups and more focus from climbing walls themselves on creating inclusive safe spaces for people from underrepresented backgrounds within climbing. There are some amazing groups, especially down in London, that I've had the pleasure of climbing with a few times, and you can just feel it. And for me, my first time joining the group in particular, Climb XR, it was like this imaginary weight had been lifted off my shoulders that I've been carrying for, pretty much my whole climbing life. And I felt so comfortable immediately and at ease. And I just felt like there was, we all got each other and there was no explanation needed for the way we'd feel in a climbing wall sometimes. And so it's really cool to see those groups popping up, becoming more popular, and also just providing opportunities for people from those backgrounds. Like, I'm pretty sure Climb XR have been to Fontainebleau, they've been climbing outside in France, and they've taken people out of the city into the Peak District, and these are all experiences that I think would have made a huge difference to me as a kid. And if I hadn't had competition to kind of carry me through this climbing community, then I didn't have the background or the parents who had like a history of walking in a national park or something. I didn't have that to keep me in the sport. So I'm glad that there are these avenues and communities and safe spaces for people who aren't pursuing competitive climbing to still be, very much in the community and progress in their own way.
That's amazing. I love that kind of metaphor you said about kind of feeling like you had a weight kind of lifted. And even I recognize that even in asking you about this, I can imagine you've been asked about this a lot, and that can come with its own weight and pressures as well. Like you say, you're passionate about it, but you're also kind of a competitor who needs to kind of focus on your goals. And I wonder how that feels to kind of juggle that.
It's actually really tough to juggle the kind of competition and focusing it feels selfish at times, but focusing on my own performance and then on the my passion for increasing diversity and inclusion within climbing. And I've kind of made peace with myself that maybe now I can't do as much as I would like to, but as soon as I step away from competition climbing, or I feel like I have more time, that's exactly what I'm going to commit a lot of myself to. And qualifying for the Olympics was absolutely incredible, and it was a personal dream, but there was also a large part of me that was just so excited because being an Olympian would give me the platform and opportunity to really work and make change on those things that I was passionate about, and give me that the platform and kind of the title to do so and to make a difference to people's lives and to climbing. And that was, that was kind of the first thing I thought of really when I found out that I'd qualified. It was like, oh, this is amazing. Now I can really do something about the things that I'm passionate about, and, hopefully bring climbing to more people and hopefully change people's lives for the better.
Wow, I mean, it shows that you don't go into it with a selfish attitude. If that's kind of one of the first things you thought after qualifying for the Olympics, like, wow, I can make a difference to a lot of people by having this platform. And I'm sure you will. Like, the fact that people are going to be watching you at the Olympics is going to make all the difference from a first standing point. But I'm sure you're going to kind of go on to do incredible things as well. Just on the point of Paris, I wanted to finish off by asking you about what your expectations are what are your goals, and how can you even imagine how it's going to be. I wonder if you've spoken to other climbers who were at Tokyo, for example, a very different kind of Olympics, but what they've kind of told you about the expectations you should have.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I still can't even imagine what it's going to be like, when you've dreamed about something for so long. And then also for a long time, like you said, climbing wasn't part of the Olympics. It was just this like fluffy like dream that had no kind of reality to it. And then climbing did become a part of the Olympics, and I almost didn't want to think about it because I wanted it so badly, and I didn't want to think about what I could miss out on. So I'm kind of, it's a mix of this like childhood dream experience and then also a bit of reality in there. And I don't really know what to expect apart from, of course, being surrounded by some incredible athletes and just a feeling of support and unity like I've never imagined. I think that's one of the things I loved the most when I was watching the Olympics as a kid, is that how it felt like the entire world was on pause almost during those few weeks during the Olympics. And you just knew that everyone was watching the same thing. Everyone was willing their like national athletes on to do the best that they possibly could. And it was just incredible, this sense of unity, togetherness, and just like pride and support that everyone had for these people that were representing nations. And so I think that, it's going to be amazing to be part of that and hopefully feel like that's behind me and that's at home, and have friends and family come to Paris as well because it's so close. And just feel that buzz, that excitement of an entire city, I guess, just all focused on one thing.
Totally. And am I right in thinking you commentated on the Tokyo Olympics? Okay, so that must have been really exciting and fun. Obviously, it's a good alternative, I guess, once you knew you weren't going yourself as an athlete, but to experience it on the other side now, I can imagine when you were kind of commentating, you were kind of like, oh, I really wish I was there. So talk to me about that experience and how different this is going to be.
Yeah, totally. And I'm someone who loves to, like, being an athlete is quite an unusual job, I think. And I always love experiencing other people's jobs and professions. So it was such a cool opportunity to be involved and see the behind the scenes, and also like how we're represented, I guess, and how we're put across to everyone watching at home. So that was amazing. And I felt really privileged to be the person that was like introducing people to climbing for their first time maybe, and hopefully sharing some insights as to what's happening, and convincing them that it was a great sport and that they should try it. And so it was a wonderful experience, and I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity. And like you said, it was great to still be involved in Tokyo despite not being there competitively. But at the end, everyone was like, well, we kind of hope to see you next time, but at the same time we don't. And I was like, don't want to see you during Paris really, unless I'm on the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
So it feels so good to be there on the other side and to be able to experience the athlete side of thing, and hopefully maybe in the future I'll go back to doing some commentary, and it will be invaluable to have had that experience and be able to share a bit more information that's interesting and useful to people on the other side of things too.
For sure. And I just wanted to ask you specifically about how the format's changed. Like you said, it's been split now, so you've got speed climbing and then you've got lead and bouldering together.
Yeah.
How much do you feel like that will benefit you because, like you say, every climber has kind of a preferred kind of format and discipline. For you, how does that kind of manifest itself? What are your expectations for both disciplines? And yeah, how important do you think this change has been for the sport so that people can also understand it better? Because I think when they're kind of all grouped together as disciplines, it like you said, I guess at the beginning, it can take away maybe from the fact that each of you have your own discipline that you prefer, and I guess having two medals just makes it better.
Totally. And I think that Tokyo was a great introduction to climbing. It was kind of like a taster of everything that we have to offer. But, you know, I felt like it was a shame because we didn't see all of the best athletes from each discipline. And that's kind of what you want to put out there and what you want to showcase. I think we still had some like really incredible speed times, but, you know, I want all of the best speed climbers in the world to be at the biggest stage for sport, and I want to see world records broken, and I think that combining them all together meant that you got some people who maybe weren't that good at speed climbing, and you know they were still good, but they weren't the best in the world, and the Olympics should showcase the best in the world of what they're doing. So I think we're all really grateful that we've been given another medal, and so the speed climbers now are all speed climbers and they're all super fast, and it's going to be incredible and nail biting and exciting to see them fighting it out for an Olympic medal and probably smashing some world records. I think they're all down like a second from the last Olympics, and I think the men's world record is now like 4 point something seconds for 15 meters, which is just, it's absolute madness. But yeah, for boulder and lead, I definitely prefer this format. Speed climbing, I only ever tried for the Olympics, so it wasn't something I did before Tokyo, and it's not something I've done since the last Olympic qualifier for Tokyo either.
Happy to let go of it.
Happy to let go of it, happy to leave it to the speed climbers, because it is an incredible discipline, but it's just not for me.
And it's so different to be fast compared to the technique and the problem solving, like we were talking about at the beginning, that you need for the other two disciplines.
Yeah, I'd say it's basically a different sport. Like, you know, it's asking athletes to do a 100-meter sprint and then I don't know, a longer running race and then shot put or something, like still kind of the same but not. And so yeah, this format will definitely allow us to see more of the specialist athletes in their disciplines and hopefully some better performances, because, you know, the speed climbers aren't particularly great at bouldering or lead climbing, and so in Tokyo we saw some of the, like, they weren't able to climb anything really on boulder or on lead, and so it's just not quite what you want to see at the Olympic Games. So this is definitely a better format, and as a lead specialist, I'm really excited to go and climb on the lead route, of course, but I've also had 4 years, I guess, to put into my bouldering skills. So I am actually looking forward to the chance to go out and enjoy the boulders and see where I've got to and what progress I've made out there as well.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad that it's kind of fits more with what the climbing community themselves would actually want as well, because like you say, it's showcasing the sport and the best should be winning the medals. So yeah, can't wait to watch you, and best of luck with it. Just to finish off, the last question I always ask the guests is, who in sport or outside of sport, which woman has kind of inspired you or been someone you've looked up to throughout your career, and kind of push you on to where you wanted to be?
I'll go with a woman within climbing, and I'll say Jang Kim, a Korean athlete. She's she must be in her 30s now, but she's always been an inspiration to me. I can't remember when her first World Cup was, but she's been competing for a long time, and she's absolutely tiny. So as another short climber, I've always looked up to the way that she, you know, overcomes obstacles in terms of being short and struggling to reach things. And she just climbs with such grace and elegance. It's just beautiful to watch. And then I can't remember how old her daughter is, but she had a little girl a few years ago, and she came back, and last year she won another World Cup. And so I think she was the first mum to win a World Cup in climbing, and it was just the most inspiring evening watching her climb with such grace and strength and precision and taking home a gold medal. So yeah, she's definitely one of my inspirations.
I love that. Amazing. Doing it for the mums as well.
Doing it for the mums.
Yeah, love that. Well, thank you so much, Molly. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. And yeah, can't wait to watch you at the Olympics. Massive congrats again. And yeah, best of luck.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to be on here.